Bayonne, New Jersey, 1963. A field of enormous steel tanks squats on the waterfront, and inside them, according to the paperwork, sloshes one of the strangest fortunes in American history: vegetable oil. Salad oil. Enough of it that a single company claims to hold more soybean and cottonseed oil than the entire United States Department of Agriculture believes exists in the whole country. Against those tanks of oil, the finest financial institutions in the world have lent an astonishing sum, over $150 million. American Express has vouched for the oil. 51 banks and brokerages hold the paper. It is considered rock-solid collateral because oil is a real, physical, measurable thing sitting in real, physical tanks. Then, in November 1963, someone finally does the simplest possible thing. They climb the tanks and lower a measuring stick to the bottom. Most of the tanks are full of seawater. A thin film of oil floats on top, just enough to fool a dipstick from above. Some tanks are connected by hidden pipes, so the same small pool of real oil can be pumped from tank to tank, one step ahead of the inspectors, playing the same shell game a conman plays with a pea. The man who filled the sea with salad oil is named Anthony Tino De Angelis, and his swindle will vaporize $150 million, topple storied Wall Street firms, and come within a whisker of breaking American Express itself. Every fraud in this series turned paper into money. Tino De Angelis turned seawater into paper and paper into $150 million. This is how. Tino De Angelis is a Bronx butcher's boy, born in 1915, who claws his way up through the brutal world of food commodities: hog fat, lard, cooking oils. He is shrewd, relentless, and already by the 1950s familiar with the edges of the law. A hog lard company he ran collapsed amid accusations of shipping short weight and adulterated product to a federal school lunch program. But Tino thinks big, and in the late 1950s, he finds his stage: the vegetable oil export boom. Under a federal program, the US government subsidizes the sale of surplus American commodities, including vegetable oil, to friendly foreign nations. De Angelis founds the Allied Crude Vegetable Oil Refining Company in Bayonne and rides the wave, becoming one of the largest oil exporters in the country. He learns the crucial fact that makes everything possible: warehouse receipts for stored oil are as good as cash. A company that holds oil in tanks can get a warehouse to issue receipts certifying the quantity. Those receipts can be pledged to banks as collateral for loans, or used to trade oil futures. The oil doesn't have to move. The paper moves. And the whole system rests on one assumption nobody bothers to test: that when a receipt says the tank holds oil, the tank holds oil. Tino De Angelis is about to test it hard. The scheme, once you see it, is beautiful in its crudeness. Allied's tanks are inspected and certified by a subsidiary of American Express Field Warehousing, whose entire business is vouching for stored goods so that banks will lend against them. Their certification is trusted worldwide, so De Angelis fills his tanks mostly with seawater, floats a layer of real oil on top, and when the inspectors come, they measure from the top hatch and find oil. He rigs tanks with false compartments and connecting pipes. When inspectors are checking tank number 7, the real oil is quietly pumped beneath their feet from the tank they just certified. One report even described a tank with a small internal chamber of oil around the measuring point and water everywhere else. American Express, satisfied, issues warehouse receipts for oil that isn't there, eventually for hundreds of millions of pounds of phantom oil. De Angelis takes those receipts and borrows against them from a syndicate of banks, and crucially uses them to plunge into the commodities futures market, betting enormous sums that vegetable oil prices will rise. By 1963, he is so large that he is effectively trying to corner the entire vegetable oil market. His borrowings run past $150 million. Two respected Wall Street brokerage houses, Ira Haupt and Company and Williston and Bean, are deep in his trades, having lent against the receipts and carried his futures positions. The phantom oil has quietly wired itself into the plumbing of Wall Street. Every cornered market scheme dies the same way. The price moves the wrong direction. In November 1963, vegetable oil futures, which De Angelis had bet would rise, suddenly fall. His futures positions hemorrhage. The brokers carrying him demand more collateral. He can't pay. Ira Haupt and Company, on the hook for his trades, faces collapse. And now people finally, urgently, want to verify the oil behind the receipts. Investigators climb the Bayonne tanks and sound them. Seawater. Tank after tank, seawater with a skin of oil. The Department of Agriculture had, in fact, quietly noticed months earlier that De Angelis seemed to be claiming more oil than existed in the entire nation's inventory. But the warning hadn't stopped the banks. Now the truth is undeniable. The collateral behind $150 million of loans is the Atlantic Ocean. The blast radius is enormous. Allied files for bankruptcy. Ira Haupt and Company and Williston and Bean are ruined. The New York Stock Exchange, in an unprecedented move, has to arrange a rescue so that Haupt's 20,000 customers don't lose their accounts. And American Express, whose subsidiary certified the phantom oil, faces liability so vast that its stock is hammered, its very survival questioned. Here comes the most famous footnote in the whole affair. As panicked investors dump American Express stock, a young Omaha investor decides the core company is sound and the Salad Oil liability survivable. He pours a huge share of his partnership's money into American Express at its moment of terror. The investor is Warren Buffett, and the Salad Oil panic becomes one of the founding trades of his legend. One man's phantom ocean is another man's once-in-a-lifetime bargain. De Angelis pleads and is convicted of fraud and conspiracy. He serves 7 years. Characteristically, it isn't the end of him. After prison, he surfaces in later decades in fresh commodity schemes. A man who never did learn the lesson, only the technique. American Express, under its new leadership, honors the liability rather than hiding behind the subsidiary's legal shield. A decision that costs it dearly in the short run and buys it a century of trust in the long run. It survives and thrives. Why does a 1963 Salad Oil scam belong beside Ponzi and Kruger? Because it is the purest proof of this series' one idea, stated in reverse. Every episode we've said money is belief wearing paper's clothes. Salad oil is what happens when everyone finally checks the clothes for a body and finds seawater. The whole magnificent tower, $150 million, 2 brokerages, a corner on a national commodity, a brush with destroying American Express, stood on a single unexamined assumption that the tank was full because the receipt said so. Nobody climbed up and looked for years because looking felt insulting to a system everyone trusted. That's the con in every era. Not the lie itself. The lie is always crude. It's the collective, comfortable agreement not to lower the stick into the tank. The playbook. What Tino De Angelis adds to the manual. Rule 1. Attack the verification, not the vault. If you own what the inspector measures, you own what the banks believe. Rule 2. Real collateral is only as real as its last inspection. And nobody wants to be the one who insists on inspecting. Rule 3. Oil floats on water. So does a lie on a deep enough pool of trust. The paper empire ledger takes its second largest hit yet. $150 million of 1963 money, and the counted total now stands at roughly $516 million. Because money was never paper. It's belief wearing paper's clothes. Next time on Paper Empire, Texas. Phantom fertilizer tanks by the thousand, a con man wired into the Vice President of the United States, and a string of deaths that were ruled suicides by men who somehow shot themselves 5 times. The dark, strange saga of Billy Sol Estes, next. Subscribe.